Night with me, Sumita Kareer. Tonight on the show, we touch upon the very crucial geopolitical story that's playing out in the Middle East. Well, as of today, the Iran-Israel conflict has escalated into the sixth day of intense aerial strikes. The day saw Iran's supreme leader warning the United States, saying that Iran will not surrender and that the United States will pay a huge price if it intervenes. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's comments come after Trump posting that it can kill Iran's supreme leader whenever it wants, but will not do it, at least for now. Donald Trump, while speaking to reporters just moments back, once again warned Iran, stating that the United States may or may not strike Iran, and he also claimed that Iranians have reached out to negotiate, but now it was too late. He also added, and I quote, "I had it. Next week will be big." Meanwhile, Pakistan's Army Chief General Asim Munir is in Washington, D.C., where he will be hosted by U.S. President Donald Trump in an intriguing visit that's, of course, making headlines everywhere. So the big questions that we are asking on the show tonight: is the United States forcing Pakistan to be a player in the Israel-Iran war? Israel versus Iran, who will blink first, and what is the United States game plan so far as that war is concerned? I'm now joined by Lev Iran, former coordinator of India-Israel Parliamentary Friendship League. He's an Israeli columnist as well, and also joining us on the broadcast is Professor Madhavdas Nalapat, Vice Chair of the Manipal Advanced Research Group. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us here on ET Now. Let me ask you first, Mr. Iran. Iran's supreme leader has said that his country will not surrender to anyone. Does that mean Iran wouldn't give up its nuclear ambitions, which is what largely the developed world is asking, the United States, Israel, and lately by G7 countries as well? And how do you really see his comments, Khamenei's comments, coming in?
First of all, Sumita, thank you for having me. I don't see how Ayatollah Khamenei can sugarcoat it. He lost the war. He cannot control his own air. You see Israeli jets all over. Also, the defection inside the Iranian army. Also, the low mood in Tehran and Isfahan and other cities. So even the fact that Ayatollah Khamenei is still alive, while two chief of staffs are already dead and also many others, it is in a way a litmus test of the situation right now in Iran.
All right, Mr. Aaron. Professor Nalapat, let me come to you and bring that point to you now. Khamenei has also warned that any United States military intervention in the conflict will be met with irreparable consequences. So what really is Iran thinking here? What is its game plan? And is it in a position to execute? Like Mr. Arav said, that many of the targets have been hit. In fact, 2 fresh facilities have been hit just today.
Look, Iran's comments perfectly illustrate why Israel and the United States are absolutely determined to ensure that Iran's clerics have zero nuclear capability. I'm not talking of civilian nuclear power, I'm talking of zero capability. The reality is they don't trust the clerics, and of course the clerics have vowed a war unto the death, and part of the death is the Jewish people and the state of Israel. So given that, there is no question that for Israel, going after Iran is an existential work. It's absolutely existential. And if you ask me, they are succeeding very significantly. Iran's defenses have been very much reduced. And in my view, these defenses are going to be further degraded and leaving the way open, very frankly, for what is Israel and the United States are hoping for regime change, in which the clerical regime falls and there is a popular uprising, such as what took place against the Shah, and the clerical regime falls and is replaced by a civilian regime. And if the civilian regime shows its good conduct, then there can be a nuclear, you can have nuclear energy, but there's no need to enrich uranium. You can get uranium fuel you can get the fuel from outside. I'm sure that will need to be part of the agreement, but that's some way off. So long as the clerics are in power, you have heard from Khamenei, you have heard his statements, irreparable price, etc., etc. Now you know exactly why Israel and the United States are joined on the quickest way of ensuring the end of the Iran nuclear capacity, period. And secondly, why, if, frankly, Israel and the United States regard clerical Iran as a mortal threat in the region to all the other countries around surrounding Iran. The comments illustrate that absolutely perfectly. And in my view, the Americans will not stop one way or the other. Israelis will not stop until the nuclear capacity is completely degraded to
Right.
zero and there's a change in the clerical regime. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Some very interesting points that you have made, Professor Nalapat, and we'll come to that point about a regime change, a possible regime change in Iran, and that's also something that the Israeli defense minister has also spoken about. But let me ask you, Mr. Arav, when Iran's supreme leader says that his country is not going to surrender anyone, wherein you hear Donald Trump, he's asking for total surrender. Today also he says that he's had it and, next week is going to be big. How will the United States ensure that Iran gives up its nuclear ambitions? Like Professor Nalapat is stating, what are some of the tactics or strategies that it's going to implement? Does it really mean a full-scale war? Does it mean military intervention by the United States?
At the beginning of the war, it was like Israel the bad cop and America the good cop. And we could believe that at least at the beginning of the war, what the Americans wanted is simply the Iranians to go back to Oman in a more humble and modest way and sign an agreement. And again, I agree with my colleague. When you enrich uranium to 60%, it means you want a war. You don't want peace. It is not to have electricity and an apartment. Okay, it means a war with Israel. So at the beginning of the war, nobody believed that Iran is so weak because with all the bravado of this Orwellian jihadist dictatorship, people believed, even here in Israel, that Iran is much stronger and we only need to bring Iran back to the Oman negotiation table. But now when we see the Iranian weakness, also the American appetite is much more. And we need to remember that Israel will have to comply to everything that Trump demands. So also if Trump will demand a ceasefire next week, we will have to comply.
Yes, but Donald Trump is stating that, his patience has already run out. He also stated that, Iran wants to negotiate. Why didn't they do it before? So why is he making these kind of statements? Why is he making statements that perhaps allude to the fact that the U.S. wants Khamenei killed? Mr. Aran, could you answer that, please? Yes.
So I believe that still Americans see Ayatollah Khamenei as the less hawkish player inside Iran. That without Khamenei, Iran would try much harder to have nuclear capabilities. So they don't see the symbol of Iran and also a very prestigious Shia religious leader as the big problem. But again, if Ayatollah Khamenei will become
let me interject you here. Let me interject you here, Mr. Araf. Do you see that possibility?
Well, I could not hear
Mr.
the question.
Araf, let me ask you, do you see that possibility of Mr. Khamenei getting assassinated realistic?
Again, I think the precise question is which kind of player is Ayatollah Khamenei? The Americans, unlike the Israelis, saw Khamenei as the less hawkish, as the more dovish player inside the Iranian elite. And this is why they thought that Khamenei is not part of the problem, he is part of the solution. But now that Khamenei himself was so humiliated by the Israeli Air Force and Mossad, and maybe he will become more hawkish. Maybe Israel and America will find a consensus that also Khamenei has to be assassinated.
All right, so you're suggesting that it could be a realistic possibility. But let me come to you, Professor Nalapat, and how would you weigh in on these comments coming in from Mr. Arav? A regime change, is that a realistic situation that the United States and Israel could achieve?
Look, the fact of the matter is that Ayatollah Khomeini had a complete regime change, and Bani Sadr, the first president, wanted a democratic Iran. The entire trajectory of Iran would have been different, but Khomeini insisted on a harsh clerical dictatorship in which supreme leader is all in all. Frankly, in Iran, the ministers, the prime minister, they count for nothing. The supreme leader and his council of advisors, who are all ayatollahs. By the way, he's supposed to have been descended very nobly, which is why he's wearing a black turban. I've been to Iran multiple times. I've met the clerics multiple times, and I know the nature of the clerical regime. If Khamenei surrenders, let me tell you, I would not be wanting to give a life insurance cover to Khamenei. The reality is the clerical regime has been kept going by sheer terror of the citizens. And frankly, most Iranians who are very modern people, they wanted a modern democracy. Instead of they got a medieval religious dictatorship. So I don't see Khamenei daring to surrender. It's far more dangerous for him if he surrenders than if he sits in some bunker worried that the Americans will bomb him. I see this war going on until there is a complete degradation of nuclear forces in the clerical regime, because the threat is from the clerical regime. If regime change takes place, well, that will be, the sooner it takes place, the better for the people of Iran. As far as the oil prices are concerned, I don't think this is going to take much longer. The rate at which the Israelis by themselves have degraded Iran's defensive capacity, offensive capacity, if the US also enters the fray, I don't see this much longer. And I see oil prices bouncing back below, well below the levels they have now as a consequence of the conflict. Thank you.
Right. Professor Nalapat, let me ask you one more question before I go to Mr. Arav. And this essentially is about, Donald Trump's statement that, next week is going to be big, or maybe lesser than that. So what are you anticipating from the side of the United States when they talk about next week going to be big, and of course a complete surrender is on the cards?
Look, Donald Trump wants to be a hero. Frankly, Netanyahu has done I would say about 80% of the job which Donald Trump is talking about, the elimination of the Iranian nuclear program. Personally, Netanyahu would welcome the direct involvement of the U.S. And the U.S. has now sent in enough battle-ready carriers. They've sent refuelers. They have sent missiles, they have sent everything. But again, as I said, Israel needs to be kept supplied with weapons. Because what Israel is doing is for the democracies, for the United States, which ever since 79 has viewed Iran as an existential threat. So I think Donald Trump would like to come in on the action before the action is all over. And in my view, the action will not take long to be over, and then you will see oil prices falling again and share markets bouncing back up.
Right.
Thank you.
Right, and we'll see that reflecting on Wall Street as well, Professor Nalapat. It remains to be seen what is going to be Donald Trump's next move with respect to Iran and Israel war. Let me come to you, Mr. Arav. Now, there is another story that's playing out, and that is, of course, the visit of Asim Munir to meet the United States President Donald Trump. Just hours back, the Indian Prime Minister, while speaking with Donald Trump, he did hear our story and how terrorism cannot really be backed by anyone. The whole world has supported that stance. So how are you, belonging to a country which has suffered terrorism, see this meeting?
There's no question that the same way that Pakistan is fanning the flames in Kashmir, also Iran is fanning the flames in Kashmir, both Khomeini and now Khamenei. They both see the Kashmir as an Islamic state that does not have to be in India, that should not be in India. So in this sense, I think that Iran and Pakistan, both of them, are enemies of India, at least as far as Kashmir is concerned. But the visit itself of Asif Munir in America also means that Americans tell Asif Munir, who is actually the president of Pakistan, he's not only chief of staff, okay? He's like the real leader of Pakistan. They tell him, look, at the beginning of the war, your ministers were speaking in a way that we didn't like. They were giving too much sympathy to the Iranian cause, and even they said that they will go to a war with Israel. If you want us Americans to see you Pakistanis still as friends at this level, at that level, you will have to stop it. And we see that Pakistan closed the border with Iran. It was a very anti-Iranian move, not a talking move,
right.
Like a move that Iran was humiliated also by Pakistan. Now, India is right that India right now cannot trust Donald Trump because India does not want Trump or any other American president to help and negotiate a peace between Pakistan and India. India feels it is a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. And I really hope that you Indians will convince Trump, although Trump is so unpredictable that I don't know if you should be so optimistic.
Right. In fact, Mr. Arif, it's not just about Kashmir, but it is essentially about the issue of terrorism that India has been communicating to the world as well with respect to several of its diplomatic missions, communicating the same, and several teams as well which have gone abroad and communicated the same. Let me come to you. Professor Nalapat, how are you seeing that? And is Donald Trump seeking to use Pakistan as a strategic lever?
Look, Donald Trump is searching for as quick an end to the Israel-Iran war as he can manage. And Pakistan is the neighbor of Iran. It has a large border with Iran, although, of course, a large part of that border is controlled by the dissidents, Baloch, Pashtun, etc. But still, the Pakistan military, he is looking at enlisting the Pakistan military in both intel as well as in assisting US strikes. And I think the Pakistan military has been providing logistical help to the United States. So this lunch meeting is only the optics.
Okay.
The question is, what is Munir going to hear in private? And I think he's going to get a very tough message in private that you better stop this kind of terror activity or you're in trouble. So all this lunch optics is optics. And behind the optics is the real situation. And the real situation is, I think the Americans understand it fully well, what Pakistan is. As far as we are concerned, President Trump is coming for the Quad meeting. I've been saying for a long time, the Quad needs to evolve into a mutual security alliance, especially against China. And I think finally it is going to happen under Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi. So very frankly, no, we are not keeping away from President Trump. And no, we do not regard him as unpredictable. He has been very predictable on Iran. He has been very predictable on Israel. He's been very predictable about so many issues, including the U.S. balance of trade deficits. So he has been quite predictable. His methods are unpredictable.
Yes.
His,
Okay.
his strategy is very predictable.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Professor Nalapat, so you're expecting more predictability to come from the U.S. administration from that lunch meeting that Asim Munir is going to have with the president. Remains to be seen. The final statement, if at all, that is issued from both the sides. Meanwhile, of course, the United States, largely under Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and Trump's first own term, they have sidelined Pakistan, and we do hope that will continue. And that's because of the support of militant groups by Pakistan. On that note, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here on ET Now. Appreciate you taking the time out.